Hi Taurus, welcome to my channel, Mary's Angel Tarot. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start the reading. There is someone thinking about you right now in a way that would change everything if you knew. Not casually, not in passing. In the deep, consuming, I can't get this person out of my head way that keeps someone awake at night staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction, every glance. Every moment where the air between you two became something heavier and warmer than ordinary air. You felt it too. Maybe you dismissed it. Maybe you told yourself you were imagining things, reading too much into a look that lasted half a second longer than it should have, a sentence that carried a weight that didn't match its words, a silence that felt less like the absence of conversation and more like the presence of something too large to say out loud. You weren't imagining it. What you felt was real. And the person on the other end of that invisible thread is feeling it with an intensity that is quietly rearranging the furniture of their inner world. But there's a complication. And you already know that, don't you? You can feel the complication sitting right beside the attraction, like a shadow that refuses to separate from the body casting it. There is someone else in this picture, another presence, another heart, another set of expectations and histories and emotional claims that creates a geometry far more complex than the simple, clean line between two people who are drawn to each other. And it's this complication, this someone else that has kept everything suspended in a state of almost spoken, almost acted on, almost real. You've been living in the almost for longer than you want to admit, and the almost has been both torturous and strangely addictive, because as long as nothing is resolved, nothing is lost. The possibility stays alive, the fantasy remains intact, and the pain of not having what you want is somehow more bearable than the risk of reaching for it and watching it shatter. I want to talk about the person who has noticed you, because there are layers to their attention that you haven't fully perceived. This isn't someone who finds you merely attractive in the surface sense, though that's certainly part of it. What has captured their attention is something far more specific and far more difficult to articulate. It's a quality you carry, and I'm going to struggle to name it precisely because it doesn't have a clean label. A quality that combines vulnerability with strength in a proportion that most people never achieve. You are simultaneously soft and unbreakable, open and boundaried, warm and discerning. And this combination, which you probably don't even recognize in yourself because you're too busy living inside it to see it from the outside, is magnetic to a very particular kind of person. Not everyone notices it. Most people see only the surface presentation, the competence, the warmth, the easy smile that makes them feel comfortable. But this person sees further. This person has noticed the depth behind the smile, the complexity beneath the competence, the entire universe of feeling and thought and desire that you keep folded up behind your public self. And what they've noticed has not left them alone. It follows them through their day. It shows up in their quiet moments. It has become, without their permission, the standard against which everything else in their emotional life is being measured. And here is where it gets complicated in a way that I want to handle with tremendous care, because the feelings involved are real and the hearts at stake are not hypothetical. There is someone else. This someone else might be in the picture on their side, a partner, a commitment, a relationship that exists in the space where you wish you could be. Or someone else might be on your side, a person you're connected to, someone who holds a claim on your time and your loyalty and perhaps your love, even if that love has shifted into something you're not sure you'd choose. Again, if you were choosing today, and this is the version that carries the most emotional complexity, The someone else might be a presence in both directions, complications layered on complications, a web of connections and commitments that makes the simple truth of two people being drawn to each other feel almost impossible to act on without causing damage. I'm not going to pretend this is simple. Anyone who tells you matters of the heart are simple is either lying or has never felt anything at the depth you feel. What I will tell you is that the universe doesn't create connections like this one by accident. The pull you feel toward this person and the pull they feel toward you is not a mistake, not a temptation sent to test your character, not the universe playing a cruel joke by showing you what you can't have. It's information. It's your spirit communicating something essential about what you need, what you've been missing, what dimension of love and connection has been absent from your life long enough that its absence has started to feel like a permanent condition rather than a temporary one. The attraction is a compass reading. It's pointing you toward a truth about yourself that you've been avoiding. And that truth doesn't necessarily mean you're supposed to act on the attraction in the way your heart is urging you to. It might mean that. But it might mean something else entirely. Something subtler and ultimately more transformative. Before I get into that subtler possibility, I want to honor the raw emotional reality of where you are right now. Because I don't think anyone in your life currently understands the full scope of what you're navigating internally. On the outside, you look fine. You're showing up, you're functioning, you're maintaining the machinery of your daily existence with the efficiency that people have come to expect from you. But inside, there is a storm, not the destructive kind, the generative kind, the kind that precedes a complete change in weather patterns. Everything is in motion. Your feelings about the person who has noticed you, your feelings about the someone else, your feelings about yourself and the life you've constructed, and whether that life is something you chose or something you defaulted into when the choosing felt too frightening. All of it is churning, colliding, producing an emotional electricity that has nowhere to discharge because you can't talk about it. Not to friends who would judge or advise or project their own experiences onto yours. Not to the someone else, for obvious reasons. Not to the person who has noticed you, because opening that door feels like it would release a force you're not sure you could control, and so you hold it alone. Inside a body that was not designed to contain this much unexpressed feeling without consequence. Your jaw tightens, your sleep fractures, your appetite becomes erratic. Your patience thins in ways that surprise you, snapping at small provocations that would normally slide past you without friction. These are not character flaws surfacing. These are the symptoms of a heart under pressure. And the pressure is about to find its release. Let me talk about that subtler possibility, because I think it's where the real gold of this situation lies. The reason this person's attention affects you so profoundly, the reason it doesn't just flatter you, but moves you, shakes something loose in your chest, makes you feel simultaneously more alive and more afraid than you've felt in years, is because their seeing of you is activating a part of yourself that has been in hibernation. A part that wants, not in the small domesticated way that your current life has trained you to want, a slightly better day, a slightly easier week, a slightly more comfortable existence, but in the raw, full-throated, terrifying way that wanting felt before you learn to manage it. You want to be desired. You want to be chosen. You want to feel the electrical current of someone's full attention trained on you with such intensity that the rest of the world blurs. You want to feel like the most important person in someone's room, not because of what you do for them, but because of who you are to them. And this wanting, which you've been suppressing, rationalizing, tucking away into corners of your psyche where it can't cause trouble, this wanting is not shameful. It is human. It is valid. And the fact that it's been activated now by this particular person at this particular moment is not an accident of chemistry. It's a message from the deepest part of your soul that says, I am still here. I still need, and I refuse to be silent any longer. Now, the someone else. Let's talk about this presence, because ignoring it won't make it disappear, and pretending it doesn't matter would be dishonest. The someone else represents something in this situation that you cannot bypass without consequence. It might represent a commitment you made in good faith, a promise that still carries weight, even if the feelings that originally inspired it have evolved. It might represent another person's heart, a heart that is unaware of the emotional earthquake happening beneath the apparently stable surface of their relationship with you or with the person who has noticed you. It might represent a chapter that hasn't ended yet, not because it shouldn't end, but because ending it requires a courage and a cruelty that your compassionate nature recoils from. Because yes, sometimes doing the right thing for yourself requires doing the hard thing to someone else. And that particular equation, my happiness versus their pain, is one that your soul has been agonizing over in the background of every distracted conversation, every mechanical kiss, every night spent lying beside someone while your mind is somewhere else entirely. I want to sit with that agonizing rather than rushing past it, because I think it holds something important. The fact that you agonize, the fact that you don't just take what you want without considering the collateral reveals something fundamental about the quality of your character. You care about the impact of your choices on other people. You carry the weight of other hearts as though they were your own. And that caring, that empathy, that almost unbearable sensitivity to the potential pain your decisions might cause it is both your greatest gift and the chain that keeps you immobilized. Because empathy without boundaries becomes paralysis. When you feel everyone's pain as acutely as your own, making any choice that might cause anyone any discomfort becomes almost impossible. And so you stay. In the almost, in the suspended animation of not choosing, in the limbo where nothing changes because change requires someone to feel something uncomfortable, and your empathy cannot tolerate being the source of discomfort for anyone you care about. But here is what I need you to hear, and I need you to hear it not as judgment, but as the deepest compassion I can offer. Not choosing is itself a choice. Staying in limbo is itself a decision. And the cost of that non-decision is being paid every single day, not just by you, but by everyone involved. The person who has noticed you is suspended in their own limbo, unable to move forward, unable to move back, caught in the same almost that has you trapped. The someone else is living in a relationship or a dynamic that contains a hollow space. They can probably feel, even if they can't name it, the space where your full presence should be, but isn't, because part of you has already left, even though your body remains. And you, in the center of this triangle, are paying the highest price of all the slow, silent cost of living inauthentically. Of performing presence where genuine presence has already withdrawn, of saying I'm fine when fine is the last thing you are. There's something I want to name about the specific kind of loneliness that this situation creates, because it's different from ordinary loneliness and it deserves its own recognition. You can be in a room full of people who love you and feel utterly, achingly alone. Because the thing that would connect you, the truth of what you're feeling, The reality of what you're going through is the one thing you cannot share. It sits inside you like a sealed room that no one else has access to. And the isolation of carrying that room is compounded by the fact that everyone thinks they know you. They think they see you. They think the person sitting across from them at dinner is fully present, fully accounted for, fully contained within the life they can observe. But you're not fully there. Part of you is in the sealed room, sitting with the feelings that have no audience, having conversations that will never be spoken, living a parallel inner life that is richer and more emotionally vivid than the outer life you present. That dual existence is exhausting. And the exhaustion is wearing on you in ways you've only recently begun to acknowledge. Something is about to shift this dynamic. Not because I'm telling you to make a choice that's not my role, and anyone who presumes to know the right answer for your heart from the outside is overstepping a boundary I refuse to cross. The shift is coming from within the dynamic itself. Energy that has been held in suspension cannot remain suspended indefinitely. It's a law of physics and a law of the human heart. The tension between what is and what wants to be has reached a critical mass, and one of three things is going to happen. Either the truth is going to surface, spoken or unspoken, deliberately or accidentally, in a moment of courage or in a moment of collapse, and the surfacing of that truth will force a reckoning that has been postponed for too long, or the person who has noticed you is going to make a move, something visible, undeniable, impossible to rationalize away as friendly or casual or meaningless. A declaration of some kind, whether it's spoken in words or communicated through action, that brings the subtext crashing to the surface and demands a response. Or, and this is the quietest but perhaps the most powerful of the three, you are going to wake up one morning with a clarity so complete that the agonizing simply stops. Not because you've figured everything out intellectually, but because your soul has finished its deliberation and handed down a verdict that your mind didn't participate in but cannot argue with. You'll just know. The way you know your own name, the way you know which direction is home, you'll know what to do, and the knowing will carry with it a peace that all the analyzing and agonizing in the world could not produce. I want to speak to what makes this person the one who has noticed you different from other people who have been drawn to you in the past. Because people have been drawn to you before. That's not new. What's new is the quality of this particular attraction. Previous attractions may have been based on what you could provide, your stability, your warmth, your ability to make someone feel safe and cared for. And those are beautiful qualities, but attractions built primarily on what you provide tend to create dynamics where you are the giver and the other person is the recipient, and the imbalance slowly drains you while feeding them. This person is not drawn to what you provide. They are drawn to who you are. There is a difference so vast between those two things that it might as well be the distance between the earth and the moon. Someone drawn to what you provide will lose interest when you stop providing. Someone drawn to who you are will only become more fascinated the more of yourself you reveal. And you haven't even begun to reveal yourself to this person. Not really. Not the unfiltered, unperformed, full spectrum version that you keep locked behind layers of social grace and protective self-editing. When that version begins to emerge, and it will, because the energy between you is creating a safety that makes emergence almost inevitable. The attraction is going to deepen into something that neither of you has a precedent for. Something that doesn't fit inside the categories of what you've experienced before. Something that, quite frankly, might terrify you. Because it's one thing to be liked. It's another thing entirely to be seen. And being seen at this depth by someone whose seeing carries this much weight is one of the most vulnerable and most exhilarating experiences available to a human heart. I want to pause here and talk about something that rarely gets addressed in conversations about attraction and love and the messy business of hearts pulling toward hearts. The someone else in this situation is not a villain. I feel this strongly, and I want to say it clearly, because the temptation when you're in the grip of a powerful attraction is to begin recasting the existing relationship as the obstacle, the problem, the thing that stands between you and happiness. And while the existing dynamic may indeed have real issues that predate this attraction and that would need to be addressed regardless of whether this new person existed, reducing the someone else to an obstacle dehumanizes them in a way that your conscience won't tolerate. They are a full person with their own heart, their own hopes, their own version of the story that may look very different from yours. And whatever unfolds, whatever the clarity eventually reveals, whatever decision you're knowing eventually produces, the someone else deserves to be held in your awareness as a complete human being rather than a plot device in the narrative of your romantic evolution. Holding this refusal to simplify a complex human being into a convenient category is not an obstacle to your happiness. It's a measure of the depth at which you're capable of loving. And it's precisely that depth that makes you so extraordinary to the person who has noticed you. There is a part of this situation that involves timing, and I feel it deserves its own space. The timing is not accidental. This person entering your awareness or re-entering it with this new intensity is happening now for a specific reason. You are in a particular phase of your personal evolution where a certain kind of connection is not just desired but necessary for your growth, necessary for the unlocking of dimensions of yourself that cannot be accessed in solitude or within the framework of your existing relationships. Some doors inside us can only be opened by specific people, not because those people hold the key, but because their presence creates the emotional conditions under which the door unlocks itself. This person is creating those conditions. Their attention, their energy, their way of seeing you is generating a warmth inside you that is slowly, steadily thawing something that has been frozen for a very long time. Something you froze on purpose, because feeling it in its liquid state was too much to bear within the confines of the life you were living. You froze your desire because desire had nowhere to go. You froze your passion because passion within a passionless dynamic felt like a cruelty directed at yourself. You froze the part of you that yearns, that aches, that reaches, because reaching towards something you couldn't have while remaining committed to something that didn't fulfill you was a contradiction your psyche could not sustain. So you froze, and the ice held until now. Until this person's warmth began to reach the frozen places and the melting started, and with it, a flood of feeling that you had genuinely forgotten you were capable of. That flood is not a danger. It feels like one because it's overwhelming and uncontrollable, and it threatens the carefully constructed stability of your current existence. But floods also irrigate. They also nourish. They also transform barren landscapes into fertile ground, and the landscape of your emotional life is about to become more fertile than it has been in years. If this message found you through Mary's Angel Tarot, if these words reached you at this specific junction where your heart is being pulled in more than one direction, then I want you to feel the precision of this timing. You're not hearing this at a random moment. You're hearing it at the moment when your capacity for honesty with yourself has reached a threshold where the truth can actually penetrate rather than bounce off. Previous versions of you would have listened to this message and deflected it. Too vague, too general, not about me. But you can't deflect it today, can you? Because something I've said has already landed in the exact place where your secret lives, and you can feel it sitting there, warm and undeniable, refusing to be unfelt. I want to talk about what this attraction is teaching you, separate from whether it leads to anything tangible, because I think the teaching itself is the most valuable part of what's happening. This attraction is teaching you that you are not done, you are not finished wanting, finished feeling, finished being moved by the proximity of another soul. There might have been a period, and I sense it was recent, where you genuinely believed that part of your life was over, that the intensity was behind you, that the most you could hope for was a comfortable partnership, a functional arrangement, a life that worked on paper, even if it didn't set your blood on fire, and you'd made peace with that. Or you thought you had. You'd negotiated yourself down to a version of contentment that was really just the absence of active pain and called it enough. But it wasn't enough. Your soul knew it wasn't enough. And this attraction, this impossible, inconvenient, beautifully disruptive force is your soul's way of proving that the fire is still there, that it was never out, that it was only banked, waiting for the right fuel, the right air, the right spark to roar back to life. Let me address the guilt, because I know it's there. It's been sitting in your chest like a stone since this attraction first announced itself in a way you couldn't ignore. You feel guilty for wanting someone while you're connected to someone else. You feel guilty for the thoughts that arrive uninvited and stay longer than they should. You feel guilty for the comparisons that your mind makes without your permission, comparing the way this person makes you feel with the way your current situation makes you feel, and finding the current situation devastatingly lacking. That guilt is not evidence of wrongdoing. It's evidence of conscience. It tells me that you are a person who takes your commitment seriously, who doesn't treat hearts carelessly, who understands that actions have consequences that ripple outward and touch lives beyond your own. Honor your guilt for what it reveals about your character, but do not let it become a prison. Guilt that prevents you from causing unnecessary harm is healthy. Guilt that prevents you from ever pursuing your own happiness is a cage. And there is a world of difference between the two, even though they can feel identical from the inside. I also want to address something that you might not have fully considered yet. The way you feel right now, the aliveness, the electric awareness, the sense of being fully awake inside your own skin for the first time in years, this feeling has value independent of its source. Regardless of what happens with this particular person, regardless of how the complications resolve, the awakening that this attraction has triggered inside you is yours to keep. It doesn't belong to them. It was never theirs to give or take away. They were the catalyst, but the fire is yours. The wanting is yours. The aliveness is yours. And even if the external situation doesn't unfold in the way your heart is hoping, the internal revolution has already occurred. You have remembered what it feels like to be fully alive. You have remembered that your heart is not a retired organ going through the motions of circulation, but a wild, beating, hungry thing that craves connection at a depth that your current life has not been providing. That remembering cannot be unremembered. That fire cannot be rebanked, and the version of you that exists after this awakening is someone who will no longer be satisfied with the emotional temperature you were accepting before. That dissatisfaction is not a problem, it's a gift. An uncomfortable, inconvenient, life-disrupting gift that is going to drive change whether you initiate it consciously or not. because a person who has been reminded of what they're capable of feeling cannot go back to feeling nothing. The gap between what is and what could be has become too vivid, too present, too physically felt in the body to be ignored or rationalized away. And that gap, that beautiful, painful awareness of the distance between the life you're living and the life your heart knows is possible, is the engine that will eventually power whatever transformation is coming. Not today, maybe. Not in the way you're imagining, perhaps, but inevitably, because you cannot unknow what you now know about yourself. And what you now know is that you are capable of feeling at a depth and intensity that makes everything you've been settling for feel like a black and white photograph of a world that actually exists in blazing color. Something is going to become clear to you in the coming days or weeks that simplifies what currently feels impossibly complex. I'm not going to tell you what that clarity will reveal, because I genuinely believe the revelation needs to arrive through your own lived experience rather than through someone else's prediction. But I can tell you what the clarity will feel like. It will feel like exhaling, like setting down a weight you forgot you were carrying because you'd been carrying it so long it had merged with your sense of self. It will feel like the moment when a tangled necklace suddenly comes free, not through force, not through frantic pulling, but through the patient, gentle, almost accidental finding of the one loop that was holding everything in a knot. When that loop releases, the entire tangle dissolves, and you're left holding something beautiful and simple in your hands, wondering how it ever got so complicated. I want to speak to what attracts him, because the title mentions attraction, and I want to honor that thread with the specificity it deserves. What draws this person toward you is not the version of yourself you've been projecting. It's not the composed, managed, socially calibrated version that you've spent years perfecting. What draws them is precisely the thing you try hardest to hide your intensity, the depth of your feeling, the way your eyes change when something moves you, the barely perceptible shift in your energy when you're in the presence of something real versus something performed. They have noticed the difference between your social self and your actual self, and it's the actual self that captivates them, the one you consider too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too passionate, too alive. Every quality that someone in your past or present has made you feel you needed to manage, moderate, or apologize for is exactly the quality that this person finds irresistible, not in spite of its intensity, because of it. And there's something about the way you move through the world that carries an energy this person can't stop responding to. It's not something you do deliberately. It's not a technique or a strategy. It's the unconscious grace of someone who has been through enough to develop genuine depth, genuine empathy, genuine substance. You carry weight without being heavy. You hold complexity without being complicated. You feel everything at full volume while maintaining a surface calm that most people mistake for ease. That contrasts the fire beneath the stillness is what pulls this person toward you with a force that their rational mind cannot override, no matter how hard it tries, no matter how inconvenient the attraction is given the complications surrounding it. What I want to leave you with is not an answer. I know that might be frustrating because your heart is hungry for direction and your mind is exhausted from running scenarios. But the honest truth is that the answer doesn't live in my message. It lives in you. It's been forming in the deep waters of your own knowing, taking shape slowly, gaining definition with each passing day. And when it surfaces, when you finally allow yourself to look directly at what you already know, you will not need anyone else to confirm it. It will carry its own confirmation, its own peace, its own quiet, unshakable authority. Until then, be gentle with yourself, Be gentle with every heart involved in this geometry, and trust that the universe, which placed this connection in your path for reasons more intelligent than your fear can fathom, has not abandoned you in the middle of the story. It knows how this chapter ends. And the ending, whatever it is, will be worthy of the depth of feeling that brought you here. All right. Thank you so much for watching Mary's Angel Tarot. Take care of your energy, and I'll see you in the next reading. Bye.